In what could easily be dubbed the most astonishing encounter of the year, Sylvester Stallone found himself in a predicament that would leave the audience breathless and yearning for the details. Little did a gang of imposing bikers realize as they thundered down the sun-bathed stretches of the Grand Canyon that they were on a collision course with a lone traveler whose calm demeanor masked the expertise of a black belt in karate. The scene was set for a confrontation that would shatter the silence of the desert and echo in the canyons of legend. Sylvester Stallone, a man whose soul was as restless as the wind, cherished the open road, the quiet hum of tires on asphalt, the endless horizon beckoning. The world was chaotic, yet here, amidst the vast desert expanses, Stallone found his peace. The decision to traverse the Grand Canyon alone was spurred by a yearning to escape the city's clamor and to reconnect with solitude. Driving his rented Jeep, he relished the shifting landscape, a tapestry of red rocks and sparse greenery, painted by the dying light of the sun into a masterpiece of oranges and pinks. As he approached a small overlook, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the canyon into shades of gold and amber. Here he paused, the engine idling as he absorbed the tranquility. But this peace was fleeting. The rumble of motorcycle engines shattered the stillness. A group of bikers clad in black leather, their bikes adorned with chrome that glinted in the fading light, pulled up to the overlook. Their arrival was forceful, entitled, disturbing the serenity Stallone had sought. The leader, a tall figure with a thick beard and an eye patch, approached Stallone. His voice, gravelly from the dust of the road, broke the silence. "Nice view, huh?" Stallone, folding his arms, responded with a nonchalant nod. The bikers, however, weren't there to admire the view. Their body language spoke of intimidation and entitlement. The leader's next words were a clear challenge. "That cabin back there, it's ours now. You're going to need to leave." Stallone's heart remained steady, his response calm yet assertive. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. That cabin is mine." It was clear from the bikers' scoffs and mocking laughter that this was not just a misunderstanding but a deliberate provocation. As the confrontation escalated, the leader made it clear, leave or face consequences. Stallone, standing firm, retorted, "If you think you're taking my cabin from me, you're going to be sorely disappointed." What followed was a tense circling, as if in a dance of dominance. The leader lunged first, underestimating the man before him. Stallone, with the precision of a seasoned martial artist, deflected the attack, swiftly taking control of the situation. Each move he made was measured, his training evident, as he handled the biker with ease. The bikers, realizing their error in judgment, regrouped, their numbers seemingly giving them an advantage. Yet as they advanced, Stallone remained unfazed. The desert wind carried the distant echo of engines, a reminder of the isolation of the spot, but all Stallone focused on was the confrontation at hand. As the sun vanished, leaving only the twilight to bathe the Grand Canyon, the conflict between Sylvester Stallone and the menacing bikers intensified. Each biker's move was met with a calculated, swift response from Stallone, who utilized his black belt in karate with a calm yet deadly precision. The leader, frustrated by his unsuccessful initial assault and Stallone's unexpected resistance, signaled his gang to intensify their approach. The bikers regrouped, circling Stallone as they prepared for a more coordinated attack. Their grins were predatory, yet there was an undercurrent of uncertainty. Stallone's composure had instilled a seed of doubt. "Think you can take us all on, old man?" The leader taunted, his voice laced with mockery and challenge. With a serene look that belied the storm brewing within, Stallone replied, "Numbers don't intimidate me." His voice was low, his stance ready. As the first biker lunged, Stallone's response was lightning fast, turning the biker's momentum against him, sending him sprawling to the dusty ground with a maneuver that showcased not just skill but a profound understanding of combat dynamics. One by one, the bikers attacked, each falling victim to Stallone's superior technique. Punches were dodged with agile sidesteps, kicks were blocked with arm parries, and each aggressive move by the bikers was met with a counterstrike that was both defensive and offensive. As the altercation wore on, the air thick with the scent of desert coolness and gasoline, the tide began to turn visibly. The bikers, initially confident in their superiority in numbers, started to falter. Their attacks became less coordinated, more frantic. Stallone's relentless defense and strategic offense were wearing them down both physically and mentally. The leader, witnessing his gang's diminishing morale, grew desperate. He stepped forward, attempting to engage Stallone directly. "Enough of this!" he roared, swinging with a heavy hand aimed at ending the confrontation with one decisive blow, but Stallone was prepared. With a deft move, he sidestepped the punch, grabbed the leader's arm, and in a fluid motion, used the leader's own momentum to throw him to the ground. The impact was a punctuation in the silent desert, a thud that seemed to echo off the canyon walls. The leader lay there, winded and disoriented, his gang too stunned to immediately react. Stallone stood over him, his breathing even, his posture relaxed yet dominant. "This doesn't have to go any further," Stallone advised, his tone firm but not without a hint of mercy. Realizing their leader was defeated, and with him their spirit, the bikers began to retreat. Their motorcycles, once symbols of their power and aggression, now carried them away in a cloud of dust and defeat. Stallone watched them go, his heart rate returning to normal, his mind clear. The desert silence reclaimed the overlook, the stars overhead witnesses to his victory. As the engine noises faded, Stallone took a moment to reflect on the confrontation. He hadn't sought this fight, but he had stood his ground. The desert around him, vast and indifferent, seemed to acknowledge his victory with a serene acceptance. He knew, however, that the night's events were but a chapter in what could be an ongoing saga. For now, though, the peace was his once more. After the bikers' retreat, Sylvester Stallone found himself alone under the expansive desert sky, the echoes of conflict fading into a profound silence that enveloped the canyon. The stillness was a sharp contrast to the adrenaline-fueled intensity of the confrontation. As he watched the last traces of dust settle, Stallone felt a momentary peace, the quiet punctuated only by the gentle whisper of the desert wind. With the bikers gone, Stallone took a moment to absorb the solitude and beauty of his surroundings. The Grand Canyon, with its layers of ancient rock, seemed timeless against the fleeting nature of human conflicts. He walked back to the overlook where the battle had unfolded and looked out over the vista that had been the backdrop to the night's violence. The canyon was bathed in the soft glow of the moon, its crags and crevices casting long shadows. In this light, the canyon was peaceful, majestic, reminding Stallone of the insignificance of the night's events in the grand scale of nature. Choosing to spend the night at the overlook, Stallone set up a small camp. He built a fire, the flames flickering against the darkness, casting a warm glow that held the chill of the desert night at bay. As he sat by the fire, the events of the evening replayed in his mind. He pondered the leader's final look of defeat and the gang's hasty departure, their engines a fading growl swallowed by the vast, open desert. Stallone's thoughts drifted to his own reasons for being there, the desire for solitude, the escape from the complexities of life back in the city. The road had always been a place of reflection for him, a way to find balance and clarity. Tonight, it had also been a proving ground. His reverie was broken by the distant rumble of engines. Stallone stiffened, listening intently. The sound was different this time, not the chaotic approach of a gang, but a single vehicle, approaching slowly, deliberately. As it drew nearer, the headlights cut through the darkness, a solitary beacon moving along the road that led to the overlook. Stallone stood facing the new arrival. The vehicle, a dusty, old pickup truck, came to a halt a short distance from the campfire. The driver's door opened and a figure stepped out, the truck's interior light casting him in silhouette. The man was older, his posture marked by the burdens of many years in the desert. He walked towards Stallone with a slow, measured gait, his hands empty and raised in a gesture of peace. "Name's Frank," he called out as he approached. "I saw the tail end of your scuffle with the bikers. Looks like you could use a friend out here." Stallone, cautious but recognizing the man's non-threatening demeanor, nodded. "What brings you out here at this hour?" he asked, his voice echoing slightly in the open air. "I live just over the ridge," Frank replied, gesturing vaguely toward the dark horizon. "Been having trouble with that gang for months now. Heard there was someone out here standing up to them." As they talked, Frank shared his own experiences with the biker gang, a series of escalating encounters that had left his property damaged and his peace shattered. Stallone listened, finding a kinship in Frank's resilience and defiance. The fire crackled between them as they discussed the nature of their shared adversary. Frank pulled a couple of beers from his truck, offering one to Stallone. They sat by the fire, the conversation turning from confrontation to the stories of their lives, the shared bond of solitary men who found solace in the rugged expanses of the desert. As the night deepened, they formed a tentative plan. Frank knew the landscape, the hidden trails and back roads that crisscrossed the desert. Together, they could do more than just defend. They could take the fight back to the gang, disrupt their movements, and reclaim the peace of the canyon. Stallone felt a renewed sense of purpose as they outlined their strategy. Here, under the stars, with the fire warming them against the desert cold, a partnership was forged, one born of necessity but strengthened by mutual respect and a shared desire to protect the land they both loved. As the first light of dawn tinged the eastern sky, Stallone and Frank agreed to meet again the next day to refine their plan and prepare for what was to come. They parted ways, Frank driving back to his property, and Stallone settling back by the dying fire to catch a few hours of sleep. The canyon was quiet once more, but for Stallone, the silence was now filled with a sense of anticipation and readiness. He knew the bikers might return, but this time he would not face them alone. With a new ally and a plan in place, Stallone was ready to defend the peace of the desert, a peace worth fighting for. As dawn painted the canyon walls in hues of amber and gold, Sylvester Stallone rose from his makeshift camp, the fire now reduced to glowing embers. The quiet of the morning was a stark contrast to the turmoil of the previous night. Today, however, was a day for preparation and planning. Stallone was no longer just a man seeking solitude. He was a defender of these lands, allied with Frank, whose own struggles with the bikers had brought them together. Stallone packed his camp with the precision of a seasoned traveler, each movement reflecting his resolve. He was a man changed not just by the confrontation, but by the responsibility he now felt towards this land and its people. As he drove his Jeep back towards Frank's property, his mind was busy strategizing. The bikers would return, of that he was certain. This time, however, they would be met with resistance that was organized and ready. Upon arriving at Frank's modest homestead, nestled between rugged outcrops and dry brush, Stallone was greeted by the older man's firm handshake. Frank's home was a testament to a life of hard work, sparse, functional, surrounded by the tools and debris of desert living. But it was also a strategic point, offering views of the approaching roads and the valley below, perfect for monitoring any incoming threats. They wasted no time. Maps were spread on a weathered wooden table, and routes were traced with fingers that were calloused but steady. Frank pointed out key locations, choke points in the roads, hidden paths the bikers used, and areas where the community could safely gather if needed. Determined to widen their circle of defense, Stallone and Frank decided to reach out to the local community. Many, like Frank, had suffered from the bikers' reign of intimidation and were likely allies waiting to be rallied. Stallone's reputation as a man who stood up to the gang had spread, and now was the time to capitalize on it to unite those who were tired of living in fear. They organized a meeting at a local gathering spot, an old, unused quarry that served as a natural amphitheater. Word was sent out discreetly to ensure the bikers remained unaware of their plans. By midday, a small crowd had gathered, their faces etched with the lines of hard living, but also lit with cautious optimism. Stallone addressed the group, his voice carrying over the stones and dust. "We're not just here to talk about problems anymore," he began, his tone resolute. "We're here to make a stand. Together we can reclaim the peace that's been taken from us. I've faced these bikers, I know we can beat them, but I can't do it alone." Nods of agreement met his words, and one by one, community members stepped forward, sharing their own encounters and the losses they'd suffered. The atmosphere grew charged, a collective energy building among the group. Frank took over, detailing the plan. Using the natural terrain, they would set up surveillance points and safe houses. Volunteers were organized into groups based on their skills. Some would serve as lookouts, others would prepare safe retreats, and a few, experienced in mechanics, would work on maintaining vehicles and equipment for quick movements. Stallone emphasized the need for non-violent measures where possible. "Our goal isn't revenge, it's safety and peace," he declared. The group agreed on using force only as a last resort, focusing instead on outsmarting and outmaneuvering the bikers. As the meeting concluded, there was a sense of unity and purpose that had not been there before. People shook hands, some smiling for the first time in months. They were no longer isolated individuals living in fear, but a community of allies ready to protect one another. Stallone and Frank watched as the group dispersed, heading back to their homes with a new sense of determination. The network they had started was small but significant. As they cleared away the remnants of the meeting, Frank clapped Stallone on the back. "We've started something here today," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. The next few days were a blur of activity. Stallone and Frank, along with volunteers, worked tirelessly. Surveillance shifts were set up, communication lines established, and escape routes marked and rehearsed. Each night, they reviewed their progress and planned for the next day. As Stallone lay in his temporary quarters at Frank's house, the weight of their task lay heavy on his shoulders. Yet there was also a fierce joy in knowing that they were no longer fighting alone. The community was with them, and together they had a fighting chance. The days of preparation passed swiftly, and with each sunrise over the Grand Canyon, the community's defenses grew stronger. Sylvester Stallone and Frank, along with their newfound allies, had transformed the area into a bastion of vigilance. The network of lookouts communicated seamlessly, utilizing hand signals and coded radio messages to keep their movements hidden from the bikers. The sense of impending conflict hung heavy in the air, a storm waiting to break. It was late afternoon when the first sign of trouble appeared. A lookout signaled the approach of the bikers, a cloud of dust rising in the distance as they thundered down the main road leading to the community. Stallone and Frank were quick to respond. They gathered at the command post, a makeshift bunker Frank had built years ago, equipped with surveillance monitors hooked up to hidden cameras along the road. The images flickered on the screens, showing a much larger group of bikers than before, their faces set in grim determination. Alerts went out and the community sprang into action. Families moved to prearranged safe houses while the designated response teams took their positions. Stallone felt a rush of adrenaline mixed with a sobering realization of what was at stake. He checked his own gear before leaving the command post, his expression resolute. "This isn't just about protecting land anymore," he told Frank. "It's about protecting lives, our way of life." Frank nodded, clapping Stallone on the shoulder. "We're ready, thanks to you. Let's show them they picked the wrong community to mess with." The bikers arrived with the roar of engines, a line of motorcycles and trucks that halted at the edge of the community. The leader, a burly man with a scar across his face, stepped forward. He seemed surprised by the quiet, orderly appearance of the town, expecting chaos but meeting calm preparedness instead. Stallone, accompanied by Frank and two other community members, walked out to meet him, standing a safe distance away. The leader's smirk faded as he took in the sight of the united front. "You got one chance to turn around and leave," Stallone called out, his voice echoing slightly in the open air. "This town isn't your playground anymore." The leader laughed, a harsh sound that grated against the tense silence. "You think you can take us all? There are more of us than you." Stallone's response was a signal, subtle but clear. At his gesture, hidden speakers around the perimeter of the town blared loud, disorienting noise, a recording of engine roars and gunfire designed to confuse and scatter the bikers. At the same time, smoke bombs, previously positioned along the bikers' flanks, were detonated, clouding the area in thick, vision-obscuring smoke. The bikers were caught off guard, their formation breaking as they tried to escape the cacophony and smoke. Stallone and his team used this chaos to their advantage, guiding the bikers into a bottleneck formed by parked vehicles and natural rock formations where the community's defense teams could safely apprehend them. As the smoke cleared and the noise died down, the bikers found themselves surrounded, not just by Stallone and his team, but by the majority of the community, who had emerged from hiding to stand their ground. The bikers, realizing they were outmaneuvered and outnumbered, dropped their weapons, their resolve crumbling. The leader, his bravado gone, looked around at the faces of the community members, no longer victims, but defenders of their home. Stallone stepped forward, offering the leader a final choice. "Leave now and don't come back. This is your last warning," he stated, his gaze unwavering. The bikers, defeated and disheartened, complied. They mounted their bikes and drove off, leaving behind a community no longer plagued by fear but fortified by unity and courage. As they disappeared into the distance, the residents of the town gathered around Stallone and Frank, their cheers filling the air. Stallone felt a profound relief mixed with pride. They had done more than protect their town, they had reclaimed it. As the sun set over the canyon, casting long shadows on the ground, the community celebrated, their spirits lifted by their collective strength and newfound peace. That night, as Stallone sat outside, looking up at the stars, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. What started as a solitary retreat had evolved into a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit when united against oppression. The peace that settled over the canyon seemed deeper, more resonant than before. Stallone knew that while challenges might still lie ahead, this community had shown that together they could face anything. The night sky, vast and endless, seemed to echo his thoughts, a canvas of possibilities illuminated by the steadfast glow of starlight. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, painting the Grand Canyon in hues of pink and gold, Sylvester Stallone stood overlooking the town that had become his unexpected home. The previous day's victory had not only dispersed the cloud of fear that hung over the community, but had also ignited a spark of hope and determination among its people. The day after the bikers' retreat, the town awoke to a new reality. No longer under the shadow of intimidation, they gathered to discuss the future, a future they now believed was theirs to shape. Stallone and Frank facilitated the meeting, which took place in the open air, under the vast sky that had witnessed their stand. "Yesterday, we took back our town," Stallone began, his voice resonant with the quiet strength that had guided them through the ordeal. "Today, we start building a future where no one has to stand alone against threats like we faced." The community decided to establish a volunteer watch group, rotating members so that everyone contributed but no one was overburdened. Frank, with his extensive knowledge of the area, took on the role of training the volunteers, teaching them how to monitor and respond to any threats without resorting to violence unless absolutely necessary. Stallone, meanwhile, proposed the creation of a community center, a place where people could gather not just for meetings and training, but for celebrations and education. The idea was met with enthusiastic approval and plans were quickly drawn up. In the following weeks, the town saw a flurry of activity. With the threat of the bikers gone, residents who had once been hesitant to invest in their homes and businesses began making improvements. The sound of construction filled the air during the day, and in the evenings, families ventured out into the town, enjoying the peace that had been hard-won. Stallone found himself deeply involved in the building of the community center. He worked alongside men and women who shared stories of their lives, their struggles, and their dreams. The center was not just a building, it was a symbol of their collective resilience and unity. The completion of the community center was celebrated with a grand opening that felt like a festival. Food was shared, music played, and children ran laughing through the crowd. Stallone, seeing the joy and community spirit, felt a contentment he hadn't known he was missing. During the celebration, the mayor of the town, a woman who had shown tremendous courage during the biker siege, took the stage. She thanked Stallone and Frank for their leadership and dedication. "Sylvester Stallone came to us as a stranger," she said, looking over at him with a smile. "But he stood by us when he could have walked away. He has shown us what we can accomplish when we stand together. Today, we honor him not just as a hero, but as one of our own." Later that evening, Stallone stood alone for a moment, looking out over the town that had adopted him as much as he had adopted it. The journey that had started as a quest for solitude had transformed into something much more significant, a journey of community, courage, and change. As the stars appeared in the twilight sky, Stallone realized that this place, these people, had given him a new purpose. He wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, he was sure he was exactly where he was meant to be. The community center thrived, becoming a hub of activity and a symbol of the town's new identity. Stallone often thought about how the center represented the collective spirit of the people, a spirit that had turned a time of crisis into a legacy of unity. As he walked back to join the ongoing celebration, the laughter and music echoing through the air, Stallone knew that while his arrival in the town had been marked by conflict, his legacy would be one of peace and community, a fitting new chapter in the life of a man who had come looking for quiet and found his voice in the chorus of a united community. If you enjoyed this story, there's another video on screen right now. Go ahead and give it a look for an even more astonishing stories. Make sure you subscribe to our channel, that way you'll never miss our newest uploads.